The preference paradox. The preference paradox is a thought experiment that challenges how we perceive choice and freedom. It proposes that by consistently making the most rational or optimal decision, we may, paradoxically, undermine the essence of true freedom. At first glance, this concept seems counterintuitive. Isn't freedom about choosing what we want, whenever we want? Yet, the paradox reveals a deeper concern. If our preferences are entirely shaped by external influences or internal logic, are we genuinely free or merely following a predetermined path? Imagine a person standing before two doors. One leads to a room filled with everything they love: cozy furniture, delicious food, and enjoyable entertainment. The other opens to a completely random experience. It could be better, worse, or simply unfamiliar. Logically, a person would choose the first door, as it promises comfort and happiness based on their known preferences. But what happens if they continue making that same choice? By always opting for what's familiar and comforting, they risk confining themselves to a bubble of predictability. Their repeated preferences start to define and limit their world. Consider how preferences form. Many believe their choices are entirely personal. Yet, preferences are molded by upbringing, culture, and environment. For instance, someone raised on a particular cuisine may favor those flavors into adulthood. Though the preference feels personal, it's deeply rooted in their background. Likewise, societal trends shape what we find attractive, valuable, or desirable. A preference may feel like a free choice, but could actually be the outcome of years of conditioning. So if our preferences are shaped by external influences, are we truly making free decisions when we act on them? The paradox becomes more evident when viewed through the lens of optimization. In modern life, we're encouraged to make the best decisions in careers, relationships, even in leisure. Technology reinforces this with algorithms on streaming services, shopping platforms, and social media that recommend content based on past choices. These suggestions feel helpful but gradually narrow our exposure. If every movie you watch is tailored to your past preferences, you might never stumble upon a film outside your comfort zone. The same applies to music, books, and news. The constant push for optimization creates a feedback loop, shrinking your world and limiting diversity. This brings us to a critical question. Is following our preferences always the best path? The preference paradox suggests otherwise. True freedom may involve making choices that defy what feels natural or logical. It may mean choosing something not because it's the optimal option, but because it's unfamiliar. In doing so, we open ourselves to experiences and ideas that could reshape our preferences. Take, for example, a person who always listens to one genre of music. If they attend a concert in a completely different style, they might discover a newfound appreciation, expanding their horizons in unexpected ways. A well-known philosophical scenario helps highlight this. Imagine a machine that can simulate any experience you desire. Once plugged in, you'd live an ideal life, filled with pleasure, satisfaction, and success. But many people hesitate to use it. Even though the machine satisfies every preference, the experiences aren't real. Something about losing the unpredictability of real life feels deeply unsettling. This thought experiment shows that we value more than just meeting our preferences. We value the freedom to explore, change, and grow, even if it involves uncertainty. Spontaneity also plays a crucial role in the preference paradox. Some of life's most cherished moments happen through unexpected decisions. Meeting someone new, discovering a hidden gem on a trip, or trying something you didn't expect to enjoy. These moments arise not because they fit our current preferences, but because we stepped outside them. If we always act rationally based on what we believe we like, we risk missing out on these serendipitous experiences. At the core of the paradox is the tension between rationality and freedom. Rationality guides us to optimize choices based on what we already know. Freedom, however, means having the ability to make choices that aren't always logical. It's about embracing uncertainty. The paradox suggests that true freedom is found in the balance between logic and unpredictability. It's not about abandoning preferences altogether, but recognizing when they start to confine us and choosing to go beyond them. This concept has real-life implications. It pushes us to question our routines and habits. Why do we make certain choices? Are they genuinely ours? Or are they shaped by external forces? Are we stuck in comfortable patterns that hinder growth? By asking these questions, we can become more aware of the influences shaping our preferences and take control of them. Consider someone who always orders the same dish at their favorite restaurant. It feels like the logical choice because they enjoy it. But what if they try something new? They might not like it as much, or they might discover a new favorite. The goal isn't to discard what we love, but to leave space for discovery. This also applies to relationships. People often seek others who share their interests and values, creating comfort and compatibility. But connecting with those who challenge our views or come from different backgrounds can foster profound personal growth. These connections may not align with initial preferences, yet they can expand our understanding of the world. The preference paradox also extends to large-scale decision-making. In societies that prioritize efficiency, there's a tendency to focus on short-term gains. Companies stick to products they know will sell. Governments choose policies that preserve the status quo. These decisions seem sensible in the moment, but can suppress innovation and progress. The paradox reminds us that growth and freedom often emerge from the unexpected. It invites us to embrace uncertainty and appreciate the unfamiliar. This doesn't mean rejecting logic or preferences. It means recognizing when those preferences become restrictive and daring to step outside them. Ultimately, the preference paradox challenges our understanding of what it means to live freely. It argues that true freedom isn't about always making the most logical or familiar choice. It's about being willing to move beyond our preferences, to explore, to risk, and to grow. By doing so, we open ourselves to a life that is richer, more diverse, and far more meaningful. The experience machine. Imagine a machine that can offer you the perfect life. Once you step inside, you're connected to a system that stimulates your brain in such a way that everything feels completely real. It generates a world where things unfold exactly how you want them to. You experience happiness, success, and fulfillment, all without the struggles or pain of the real world. This is the core idea behind the experience machine, a thought experiment introduced by philosopher Robert Nozick. It poses a simple yet profound question. If you had the opportunity to plug into such a machine, would you? At first, the concept seems appealing. After all, who wouldn't want a perfect life? This machine can give you any experience you desire. You could feel the joy of reaching your greatest dreams, whether that's becoming a world-renowned artist, journeying across the galaxy, or finding true love. Inside this virtual reality, everything feels just as vivid and real as life outside. You wouldn't even realize you're connected to a machine. As far as you're aware, this ideal life is your reality. The only decision to make is whether or not to step inside. But there's something unsettling about that choice. If everything is perfect, why would anyone hesitate? The machine guarantees happiness. Shouldn't that make the decision obvious? Yet, for many people, the idea of plugging in doesn't feel quite right. There's an underlying feeling that something valuable might be lost. But what, exactly, would that be? One major concern is authenticity. Within the machine, your experiences aren't real. Yes, they feel real, but they're not. If you win an Olympic gold medal in the machine, you didn't actually train or compete. The machine simply simulates the sensation. The achievement isn't genuine. Many people deeply value authenticity in life. They want their success to be earned, not generated by a device. This desire for real accomplishment makes life in the machine seem less meaningful. It's like the difference between climbing a mountain and being airlifted to the summit. The view might look the same, but the journey is fundamentally different. Another issue is the loss of connection to the real world. Inside the machine, you are alone. The people you see and interact with are not real. They're just simulations. They might seem like friends or family, but they don't truly exist. In the real world, relationships are built through shared struggles, trust, and emotional vulnerability. These genuine connections are what give life depth and meaning. In the machine, those bonds vanish. Even if it feels like you're loved, it's not the same as being loved by an actual person. There's also the matter of personal growth. Real life is filled with obstacles, and these challenges shape who we are. Failing, learning from mistakes, and overcoming adversity help build resilience, empathy, and wisdom. But in the machine, such struggles are absent. Everything goes your way. You never need to grow or adapt. While that might sound appealing at first, it raises a critical question. Can you truly appreciate joy without having experienced sorrow? Is a life without difficulty truly fulfilling, or does it lose some of its richness? The experience machine also raises important concerns about freedom. While you're inside, your life is pre-programmed. You're not making real choices because the machine is determining everything for you. Even though it feels like you're in control, you're not. This lack of true agency troubles many people. A key part of what makes life meaningful is the freedom to make your own decisions and shape your own future. In the machine, that sense of freedom is nothing more than an illusion. Some argue that plugging into the machine could even be seen as selfish. While you're off living your dream life, the real world continues on. Problems like poverty, injustice, and environmental crises still exist. But you've removed yourself from the opportunity to help. By choosing the machine, you're choosing to turn your back on reality and focus solely on your own happiness. For those who find meaning in serving others or working toward a greater good, that makes the machine an unacceptable choice. On the other hand, there are people who argue that entering the machine isn't that different from how we already live. People chase pleasure, success, and happiness in their everyday lives. They pursue entertainment, relationships, and goals to feel satisfied. So if the machine simply delivers those things more efficiently, why not use it? If happiness is our ultimate goal, the machine seems like a fast track to achieving it. But maybe happiness isn't the only goal. Nozick's thought experiment suggests that people want more than just to feel good. They want reality, growth, connection, and freedom, even if those come with discomfort, struggle, and pain. While the machine eliminates life's hardships, it also strips away the good that arises from facing adversity, forming genuine relationships, and engaging with the real world. It replaces real experiences with artificial ones. And for many, that trade-off is simply too much. There's no definitive right or wrong answer to this thought experiment. Its purpose isn't to dictate a decision, but to help you explore what really matters to you. Is happiness enough? Or do you need something more? Would you choose a perfect illusion or a flawed reality? The experience machine forces us to confront these tough questions. Even if you decide you wouldn't plug in, it challenges you to reflect on how you live your life. Are you chasing shallow pleasures that feel good in the moment but lack true meaning? Are you prioritizing authenticity, growth, and connection, even when they're difficult? The machine might not exist, but the choices it symbolizes are very real. In the end, the experience machine reveals the complexity of human desire. We crave happiness, but we also crave meaning. We want comfort, but we also need challenge. We long for control, but also for spontaneity. Life is a constant balancing act between these opposing forces. This thought experiment reminds us that there are no easy answers, whether or not you choose to plug in. Thinking about it can help you understand your values more clearly and perhaps even change how you live your life. The drinker's paradox. This is a puzzle that appears absurd at first glance, but reveals its logic upon closer inspection. It claims that in any bar, there exists at least one person such that if that person drinks, then everyone else in the bar drinks too. At first, this statement feels completely counterintuitive, almost ridiculous, but it is actually a valid conclusion based on its logical structure. To understand the drinker's paradox, it's important to examine it step by step and explore how formal logic functions in this case, and why this seemingly bizarre statement holds up. The paradox relies on a foundational principle of formal logic, specifically, the concept of implication. In logic, a statement of the form if A, then B is considered true in all situations except when A is true and B is false. In other words, if A never occurs, the implication is still regarded as true. For instance, consider this example. If it rains tomorrow, I will stay indoors. If it doesn't rain, the statement remains true because the condition it raining never happens. This concept is essential for understanding the drinker's paradox, which hinges on how logical implications work, rather than on the real-life behaviors of people who drink. Now, picture a bar full of people, some of whom are drinking, while others are not. The paradox claims that among them, there is at least one person for whom the statement is true. If this person drinks, then everyone in the bar drinks as well. Let's explore this through two different scenarios. In the first scenario, everyone in the bar is already drinking. In this case, the paradox is easily satisfied. You can choose anyone at random from the bar, and the condition is trivially true. If this person drinks, everyone drinks. Since everyone is already drinking, no issues arise here. The logic checks out. The second scenario is more intriguing. In this case, not everyone is drinking. Perhaps some patrons are drinking while others abstain. At first, this seems to invalidate the paradox. How could such a person exist? But here's where logical structure becomes crucial. Pick one individual in the bar who is not drinking. Let's call this person Alex. Consider the statement. If Alex drinks, then everyone else drinks. Surprisingly, this is logically true, because Alex isn't drinking. Since the condition Alex drinks is not satisfied, the statement can't be proven false. And in logic, that means the implication is automatically considered true. This is the counterintuitive part of the paradox. As long as Alex doesn't drink, the statement remains logically valid. That's the key. The drinker's paradox pushes us to distinguish between practical reasoning and formal logic. In everyday life, we often think in terms of causality. How could one person's drinking cause everyone else to drink? But the paradox isn't about influence or cause and effect. It's about the structure of the logical statement. Whether people in the bar affect each other's behavior is irrelevant. What matters is that the implication, if this person drinks, then everyone drinks, can't be proven false. To further clarify, let's use a different example with the same logical setup. Imagine a park filled with people. Someone says, there is at least one person in the park such that if they clap, everyone else claps too. This seems implausible at first, but the logic holds. If no one claps, the condition is satisfied because the initial action, someone clapping, never occurs. So the implication remains true by default. If everyone is already clapping, the condition is satisfied as well. In either situation, the logic works, regardless of how unrealistic it may seem. The drinker's paradox isn't just a quirky riddle, it highlights how formal logic can produce conclusions that defy everyday intuition. In ordinary thinking, we rely on practical reasoning and assumptions, which can lead us to reject statements like this as nonsensical. But logic obeys strict rules that don't always align with common sense. Exploring paradoxes like this one helps us understand the inner workings of logical systems. They reveal how logic maintains internal consistency, even when its outcome seems strange from a real-world perspective. The paradox also invites us to reflect on how we use language and reasoning. In everyday speech, statements often come with implied context. For example, someone might say, if I win the lottery, I'll buy a car. We usually assume they're talking about a realistic scenario like actually buying a ticket. But in formal logic, the statement is still considered true, even if they never participate in the lottery. The drinker's paradox strips away those assumptions. It forces us to engage with the bare mechanics of logical implication. It challenges us to reconsider what we mean when we label a statement true or false. What makes the paradox especially fascinating is its generality. It applies to any situation involving implications, not just bars and drinking. You could say, in any classroom, there is at least one student such that if they stand up, everyone else stands too. The structure is the same, and the logic holds up. The specific setting doesn't matter. What counts is how the logical statement is constructed. In philosophy, paradoxes like this serve as valuable tools. They help us test the boundaries of reasoning, explore the difference between logical and practical truths, and remind us of the unique nature of formal logic. The drinker's paradox is particularly powerful because it demonstrates that even the most seemingly absurd claims can hold under scrutiny. It teaches us to examine our assumptions and to develop a sharper, more precise understanding of logic and how it operates. Ultimately, the drinker's paradox reminds us that logic doesn't always follow our expectations. It asks us to set aside intuition and focus on the structure of reasoning itself. By doing so, we develop a deeper appreciation for how logic functions and why it sometimes leads to surprising conclusions. Whether in a bar, a park, or a classroom, the paradox remains true. It shows us that, even in its most unintuitive form, logic is a powerful tool for making sense of the world. The paradox of omniscience. The idea of omniscience is both fascinating and deeply challenging to examine. At its heart, this paradox raises a profound question. Is it logically possible for a being to possess complete knowledge of everything, including knowledge of its own future actions? If a being is truly omniscient, then it must know all events in the universe, every choice made by every creature, every occurrence, and even every decision and thought it will make itself. But this concept leads to difficult philosophical issues. Can a being that already knows everything it will do truly act freely? Does this foreknowledge place limits on its power or freedom to choose? These are the core concerns of the paradox. To grasp the paradox more clearly, we must first understand what omniscience entails. An omniscient being, by definition, possesses knowledge of everything, spanning past, present, and future. This includes not only facts about the external world, but also an intimate understanding of its own internal states, decisions, and intentions. For instance, if an omniscient being plans to lift a stone tomorrow, it would already be aware of this decision today. But if it already knows what it will do, is it truly free to make a different choice? If it is capable of changing its mind, then its prior knowledge would have been incorrect, contradicting its omniscience. On the other hand, if it cannot choose otherwise, then it seems restricted by its own foreknowledge. This raises a serious question. Is such a being genuinely all-powerful and free? To illustrate this more vividly, imagine a hypothetical scenario. A perfectly omniscient being writes a comprehensive book detailing every event in the universe, including all of its own future actions. This book is entirely accurate and cannot be wrong, because any inaccuracy would contradict the being's omniscience. But once the book is written, could the being decide to act differently than what the book describes? If it does, the book would be incorrect. If it cannot, then the being seems to be bound by the very knowledge it possesses. This is where the paradox becomes clear. Omniscience seems to conflict directly with the concept of free will. Some philosophers suggest that this contradiction stems from a misunderstanding of what it means to know the future. They argue that foreknowledge does not necessarily equate to determinism. Just because a being knows what will happen does not mean it caused those events, or that the events couldn't unfold differently. Consider an analogy. If you record a football match and later watch the recording, you know exactly how it ends. But your knowledge of the outcome has no effect on the player's actions during the game. In this light, an omniscient being's knowledge of the future doesn't necessarily interfere with the freedom of the events it knows. However, this reasoning doesn't fully address the paradox when applied to the omniscient being itself. If the being knows in advance what it will do, can it then do something different? If it can, its previous knowledge was wrong. If it cannot, then its freedom seems to be limited by its own foreknowledge. This dilemma illustrates the deeper conflict between having total knowledge and the freedom to act. It suggests that knowing everything may come at the cost of being free. The paradox becomes even more complex when we consider the idea of knowing the unknowable. Can an omniscient being know the outcome of truly random events, such as the decay of a radioactive atom? Quantum mechanics proposes that some processes in the universe are fundamentally indeterminate. Their outcomes cannot be predicted with absolute certainty. So, if an omniscient being does know these outcomes, it raises doubts about whether the universe is genuinely random. But if it doesn't know them, then its knowledge is incomplete, which contradicts the definition of omniscience. The paradox also touches on the question of self-knowledge. For a being to be omniscient, it must know every detail about itself, its own thoughts, motivations, and actions. But can a being fully understand itself without entering into an infinite loop of self-reflection? Picture standing between two mirrors, each reflecting the other endlessly. The result is an infinite corridor of reflections. Similarly, if an omniscient being attempts to completely know itself, it may trigger an infinite loop of introspection. This raises the question, is complete self-knowledge even possible, even for a being that is supposed to know everything? Some theologians and philosophers try to resolve the paradox by redefining omniscience. They argue that omniscience does not necessarily include knowledge of future free actions. According to this view, the future is not fixed, and even an all-knowing being cannot know what hasn't yet been decided. Instead, the being knows all possible outcomes and is fully aware of every possible decision that could be made, but not which one will ultimately occur until it happens. This preserves the idea of free will while still maintaining a broad, though slightly limited, definition of omniscience. Others argue that the paradox only appears to exist because human logic is inherently limited. From this perspective, omniscience is a concept that lies beyond human comprehension. Any attempt to evaluate it using logic is bound to fail. This interpretation suggests that the paradox isn't a genuine contradiction, but rather a reflection of how limited our reasoning really is. While this explanation avoids the logical problem, it doesn't solve it. The paradox remains unanswered, simply pushed beyond our intellectual reach. The paradox of omniscience also raises profound questions about the nature of time and reality. If time is not linear, but instead resembles a block universe, where past, present, and future all coexist, then perhaps an omniscient being's knowledge of the future doesn't conflict with free will. In this framework, the future already exists. The being's knowledge of future events would be like reading from a timeline that's already set, just another part of the fabric of reality. However, this interpretation clashes with our everyday experience of time as something that flows forward, which introduces yet another layer of philosophical complexity. In the end, the paradox of omniscience underscores the deep difficulty of reconciling infinite knowledge with free agency. It challenges the very foundations of how we think about logic, causation, and the essence of reality itself. Though it may never be definitively resolved, engaging with the paradox pushes us to reflect more deeply on the boundaries of what can be known and the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. Whether examined through philosophy, theology, or science, the paradox continues to provoke thought and spark meaningful debate. It reminds us of the intricate tension between what we know and what we may never be able to grasp.